begin our meeting of the Design Review Board here for the month of February. And we appreciate you all's attendance and your involvement in this process, and in which we're all volunteer review board members, and but we attempt to assist property owners with historic properties and overlay district properties and making improvements that are primarily viewed from the public right-of-way. And so we have a process we do that, and we'll, when we get to that point, our secretary, Rebecca Seymour, will read the application and then let you come forward and give your name and address, and then you can make comments on your proposal. And then there will be an opportunity for the public to speak, either for or against your proposal. And we have a 5-minute limit on that. But before we do that, we have some other business to do. I think we needed to look at our minutes. If you guys could review minutes for January 19th. We actually have three sets of minutes, I believe, for the 19th, special called work session, which was a site visit, and then a work session and a regular meeting last month.
Mr. Chairman, while the members are looking at it,
Okay.
The regular meeting agenda on page 5, toward the bottom, the motion that Mr. McMichael made concerning Ms. Knowles' application for special tax assessment, sub-item 1, there was a clerical error in that, which we've corrected in these minutes concerning the incurring minimum expenditures. The way it was worded initially was they had to already have incurred those initial expenses, a preliminary, those minimum expenditures, but that really is done at the end of the project.
Yeah.
So we changed have been incurred to will be
Will
incurred
be
and paid,
incurred.
which is the correct language.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions about the minutes? And then we can entertain a motion. Yes. Okay.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes as presented with the noted corrections as Mr. Holly presented.
Okay, have a second?
A second.
Okay. Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. We approve minutes for January 19th, the 3 meetings. Raise your right hand. Okay, minutes are approved. Then one other bit of business is the election of officers. And so now we'll open nominations for chair.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate McDonald Law for chairman.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Okay. Then we have a second.
Second.
Motion second. Okay. We'll go ahead and vote. I think we can probably vote, one office at a time. All in favor of electing McDonald Law to chair, again, the Design Review Board for the 2023 year. Raise your right hand. Okay, looks like I'm elected. Thank you, I think.
Full confidence.
Now, vice chair, do we have nominations?
I nominate John McMichael.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations, and all in favor of electing John McMichael for vice chair, raise your right hand. Okay, John is elected. Secretary, we'll go ahead. I think we probably can vote on her. She is provided by staff, but we'll go ahead and put her name in nomination.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we have Rebecca Seymour as our secretary for the DRB.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of Rebecca serving as the secretary? Raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. I don't think we get to elect the counselor.
You saddle with whatever you get.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a matter of order. Have we had any word from city council when they're gonna appoint the two absent positions that we have?
Rebecca, do you know anything about?
I haven't heard anything about when they're planning on making their nominations.
Okay.
So just a
Yeah, I understand Ms. Lipscomb was nominated at the last meeting on the 13th, so it's
Yeah.
possible she would be voted on at the second meeting.
which is Monday,
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a possibility.
One more vote.
but we've had one position open since, I believe, October, all right?
Mhm. Right. Okay, all right, thank you. I think we can now proceed into the new business. Yeah. Yes.
No.
Yes, go ahead.
No, sir, there's, it's not a public hearing, it's internal, it's provided by the bylaws. And traditionally, there's been no public comment. Whatever information, Mr. Rinaldini, that you provided has been shared.
Rebecca, would you like to read our application, B, I believe it is, under new business?
Item B under new business, application number CERD 23-001032. Applicant William Dalzell requests approval to construct new single-family dwellings at 1205 Park Avenue Southeast, 1209 Park Avenue Southeast, and 231 Berkley Street Southeast.
Yeah,
Tax
let's
map
stop.
parcel.
I think we can stop. Thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record. That is, I believe that now, since we're not really going to consider it at this meeting, we're talking about continuing this to next month. Is that correct? In our
Yes.
work session?
That was the understanding we had.
So we don't really need to vote it up or down, but we do need to vote if we agree to continue it, if someone would.
I'll
Thank
make-
you, Rebecca.
Yeah, I make a motion that we continue the item number CERD 23-001032. Based on the fact that he needs to go back and rework his site plan and present to us exactly what he's requesting.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if the motion is to continue it, and for the purposes indicated, the next meeting is right upon us, March 7th. So I don't know if you want to identify a meeting to which it's continued. For example, the April meeting.
I think it'll take him longer than,
I don't think he's got 2
couple of weeks, yeah.
I think it'll take him
You wanna-
at least
you wanna-
30 days to get that together.
Do we need to identify, we do need to continue it to a particular meeting,
May-
you know?
If we,
Can we continue it until he gets the paperwork complete?
I would suggest something along those lines, that the motion be restated to be, it's continued until the applicant provides a complete application package.
Okay, so
Good.
modify it based on Mr. Holly's recommendation.
Okay, motion second, amending that application. All in favor of the motion to continue this until adequate information is provided to staff, raise your right hand. Okay.
Well, he was, and just as an aside, not necessarily to be in the motion, but he had to get another site engineer to work it up for him, and that's gonna take some time to get on the schedule to do that, so.
Right, and he's maybe gonna have much improved site plan, yeah. Okay, we have on our agenda executive session. If someone feels the need to do that, I'm not
We get-
sure.
Mr. Chairman,
See,
See, okay,
Item
that's
C.
right, sorry. Rebecca, go ahead and read us the application.
item C under new business, application number CERH 23-021, Applicants Samuel and Ann Clemens request approval to remove a chimney at 930 Grace Avenue Southeast to allow for the addition of a master suite and bathroom, tax map parcel 121-10-18-002.
Okay. Now, do
This
we
is a-
have, go ahead.
I have additional information for you. This is a contributing property within the Historic Overlay District, and it's zoned as a horse district. The Historic Resource Survey lists the building construction date as 1931, while the county records list the construction date as 1937. This parcel has had an address change from 426 Orangeburg Street Southeast to 930 Grace Avenue Southeast in 2021, so that's why the Historic Resource Survey records record this parcel as being 426 Orangeburg Street.
Okay.
The applicant is requesting to demolish the chimney from the roof to the foundation in order to make their additions. And the applicant cites that the proposed removal of the chimney is appropriate because the chimney is not original to the construction of the house. The applicant estimates that it was added in the 1970s. And I believe the applicant is here to speak on the application.
Good evening. My name's Brian Supin. I'm with Easy Street Remodeling and Home Repair. I'm here to represent Ann and Samuel Clemens for 930 Grace Avenue. The chimney in question is a utility chimney that is no longer in service. The portion below the roof line, half of it was original to the house. It was part of a potbelly stove. If you look at the picture, that's the portion on the left. The portion on the right was added, we estimate in the 70s, as a utility chimney. And then once they did that, from the roof line up, it's a complete brand new structure. The brick is more modern brick. It's not original to the era or when it was originally constructed. We removed a boiler system which fed 11 radiators in the house and put in a modern HVAC system, forced air. And we got rid of the gas hot water heater that was in the utility room as well. So we no longer need the exhaust through that chimney. And we're gonna utilize that space, which was a utility area behind the kitchen, as part of a bathroom that's gonna be part of a master ensuite as a mother-in-law suite to the house. We are not adding or changing the footprint of the house. We are just utilizing what was like a mudroom slash utility room and the utility area where the boiler was located to make the new space.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Supin?
So, Mr. Supan, this chimney you're removing, I understand you want to make a bathroom in that area, but you're not requesting any changes to windows or doors or siding or anything like that?
No, we contacted Mary last spring and talked about changing the color of the house. And she said if we stayed within the Benjamin Moore historical palette, we didn't need to go before the board for that. And we did paint the house. It was like a butter yellow, and now it's a beigeish pink with green trim that was original. We kept the green trim. So now it's pink and green instead of yellow and green. No, we're not trying to change. Eventually, we're going to ask to change the windows because they are lawfully unsafe. There were windows that were put in, we estimate, in the 70s. There's a key for every single lock on every single window. And the key has to be present in the lock for the window to open. They are a hazard, and they're just not something we're going to address at this time, probably in the next year or two. We're going to replace them with Anderson. Well, we're going to request to replace them with, a wooden Anderson Series 400 window like we did on Ray Lane that you guys approved. We just not doing it yet at this time, but no other changes to the exterior. It's just except for the chimney being removed, and then we'll just replace the shingles. And the other one thing that we're going to do, which we didn't need permission for, because it's going to be similar, is behind. I believe there's a picture. There is a doghouse on the property that was built in the 1930s. We're going to convert that into a home office for Samuel, and we want to replace the roof with a standing seam roof in black, because that roof is leaking terribly.
Is that a V-groove, or what is that?
That's a standing seam roof.
Standing seam now, currently?
I believe so.
Okay.
And we're gonna, we think a standing seam roof is a lot nicer looking. It's a small area, but it's that was actually a doghouse, believe it or not,
Okay.
where they kept the hounds.
Okay.
But we're not going to change we're leaving the windows, we're leaving the doors. We're just going to, put a new roof on it and insulate it, put a split unit air conditioner on it, and, make it so we can use it as a home office.
Is it fairly good shape?
I mean, it's cinder block construction, so I said the roof's in bad shape, but we'll address that when we fix it. It's got 2x4 rafters, which we'll get rid of those and put in 2x8s for the new roof because we don't want to deal with snow load issues in the future or ice.
Okay. Okay.
But it'll look pretty much the same, except for a shiny new black standing seam roof.
What kind of finish is that? Is it a baked on finish or is it a powder coat?
It's powder coat, I believe.
And the shingles on the house are
Architectural shingles.
fiberglass shingles?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're in really good shape. They were probably done in between the house. This is the third owner of the house, I believe, in 3 years. The house was sold by a couple to an individual gentleman who had it for about a year and then sold it to the Clemens.
And the doghouse is a separate roof, isn't it?
Yeah, the doghouse is a separate structure. There's also a barn on the property, an L-shaped barn, which we painted as well to match the house.
Okay. Good. Any other questions?
No, just other than the changing of the windows, that'll make it complete?
From an outside perspective, yes, sir. I mean, we're doing some work inside. We're remodeling the kitchen,
Right.
but they had beautiful beadboard tongue and groove walls and ceilings, which we uncovered when we stripped the sheetrock, and we're going to restore that, and we're going to have some more milled out of West Columbia.
Great.
So it's going to be a really cute cottage. I mean, we're really, this couple is in their intent is to keep it, a cottage in a quaint little cottage downtown.
Kind of bring it back to where it was?
Absolutely nicer, actually. We when we took all the sheetrock off, we discovered all the soot on the walls from the potbelly stove, which we're going to have to clean so we can paint.
Okay. Nice little hidden.
Yeah, it's a neat little property. It's on
Property,
it's
yeah.
on South Boundary, Grace, and Orangeburg, and most people don't know it exists because it has a paddock next to it with a bunch of trees in the zone between the paddock and South Boundary, so people don't really know what's there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, do we have anyone here who would like to speak with regard to the removal of this chimney? Mr. Rinaldini, go ahead. If you could come give us your name. We know your name, but please give it again for the record.
Hi, Louis Rinaldini, 638 Magnolia. I would like to speak in support of the project. Sounds great. But I'm also here to talk about procedures for this project and other projects. I'm glad to hear John's recommendation or request for a review of design review board procedures, because I think they're urgently needed. In particular, the past behavior of this board has been well below par. And I must say, I'm shocked and saddened that this board has failed to take responsibility again in appointing McDonald Law as chairman, since he was integral in some of those failures. And we have no objection to Mr. Law personally. He's been a great contributor to many projects in the city and contributed a lot of his own personal time to these matters. But I think actions have consequences, and Mr. Law's actions in the recent year, after many years of faithful service to the city, were exactly what is not expected of a historical preservation commission in approving what we think is illegally and detailed in great detail in our lawsuit, violating just about every statute applicable to the Hotel Aiken and the Pascalis project. I think the members of the board need to discuss among themselves, are we really comfortable reappointing someone with that record? That record needs to be made public for the public to understand, and it wasn't made public when he was reappointed. We believe, therefore, Mr. Law's appointment is invalid because the only thing the council disclosed to the public were the positive aspects of Mr. Law's record and not the negative aspects. So you just, congratulations, elected a chairman who may not be eligible to serve on this board or may not be properly seated on this board. As a result of that, your own notice of this meeting may not be valid. The record of this meeting may not be valid, and you may be doing yet another disservice to the members who make their applications because
Mr.
they don't know.
Rinaldi, we asked if you would comment on the application,
This is a comment on the application.
on that application?
Yes, it is.
Chimney.
This applicant doesn't know whether the chairman of this board is properly seated
Mr.
because
Rinaldini?
But
he's
you
being
don't-
challenged. That's fine, I'm done.
Okay, well, just to, if I may, if you'll accept this as said in good faith, you don't have to agree with it. City Council is the sole decision maker on appointments to these various boards and commissions. And once appointed, whether someone's qualified or not, their actions are valid under South Carolina law as long as they serve, unless for some reason a court takes action on it. So any votes, any actions on any certificates of appropriateness are by law valid despite your representations. And those representations also involve a lawsuit, which this board, of course, is a defendant in, and they're not in a position to argue about that because they are defendants. And I say that with respect,
And
I just
I
wanted to,
entirely agree with your analysis. Thank you. I'm not sure that that's correct, but
that's fine.
it's to be determined by law whether that appointment is valid and those votes are valid. In general, I would also argue that because of the Freedom of Information Act violations of the public not being informed, those actions do get invalidated because of the failures under the Freedom of Information Act for the public to be informed.
And that relates to what City Council did, not this board. So,
Well, even this board has to conduct itself in a way that it says we're aware that there's a challenge and therefore these actions are being taken under those grounds.
And
But
it's-
anyway.
thank you, sir.
Any other comments about the chimney replacement? We do have some fairly strict criteria on chimneys in our guidelines, primarily for chimneys that are original chimneys, because they often help to identify the age, the era, and the architecture, and a lot of them are fairly ornate. And yours doesn't quite qualify as original. So I would like to say that, before we vote. If there are no other comments from the public, though, we'll go ahead and have a motion, and then we can have some discussion if need be.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we approve application CER H 23-21, removal of a chimney at 930 Grace Avenue, and that we as a board find it that it complies with the recommendations laid out in the Old Aiken guidelines on page 65, specifically on chimneys. We find that the chimney is not original to the house. It is not a historical chimney. It adds no architectural interest to the house. There's no reason to keep it. And as the homeowner wishes to remove a non-historical chimney, we have no problem with that.
Good, thank you. And then there's another part of his,
Yes, and I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And also, excuse me, also that we are okay with replacing the metal roof as specified in the plan. And I don't have the reference, but that's a like kind replacement of the roof, metal roof. So find it in like kind.
okay?
I second the motion.
Motion second, any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the application as submitted for the chimney removal, raise your right hand. Okay, y'all are approved.
Yeah, one last question. When are you gonna start? Tomorrow. Good.
Okay. Now, back to where we were a while ago. I think we maybe some of you heard in the work session discussion about our maintenance plan. There is a fairly detailed maintenance plan that's in the packet. You all have copies of that, and maybe some of you helped to develop it. It sounds like that Sabina's here representing the owner. Sabina, would you like to come forward, and then I believe we'll kind of
I
repeat.
think the next item on the agenda is executive session.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if you feel like we need to have it, we can have it. Right, we really are probably going to end up continuing this too, don't you think? But yet, we need to find out why we might continue it. We still have room to do an executive session if you like. Why don't we get her?
We could, if council so wishes, they could do an executive session afterwards. If
Do we have to vote on a change to the agenda if we do that?
I think the action, well, why don't we, if it's okay, hear the presentation first? Is that
Sure.
okay?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Yeah, just, come to the lectern and give your name and address, and then we might,
And
Kind of go-
and position with the city.
Good evening. My name is Sabina Craig, 821 Rutledge Road, Southwest, here in Aiken. I am the Development Project Manager with the Economic Development for the city. I am going to call Tim O'Brien, who spoke earlier in the work session, and he will speak on the telephone to address you all.
okay?
While Ms. Craig is doing that, we just might state that we learned in executive session that Mr. O'Brien's mother was having a serious problem and he had to go to Columbia to check on her, and that's why
Yes.
he's not here.
Hello.
Good afternoon. Tim, I have you on speaker if you want to state your name, address, and position with the city.
Okay. Tim O'Brien. I'm the Economic Development Director for the city. I reside at 593 River North Drive in North Augusta.
Thank you, Tim. If you would, I think you can briefly review the information that you presented to the DRB in the work session regarding consultants and the time frame to come back to the DRB. Would you do that? We'd like
Sure.
something for the record.
Certainly. First of all, I just want to say to the board and the members of the public present, I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I did have some urgent family medical issue that I'm a primary caregiver and I had to tend to, so I apologize for that. No disrespect intended. But on the issue at hand, just an update, as I shared in the work session, that at the last meeting of Aiken City Council, second and final reading was approved of changes to Chapter 11 of City Code, which established the Aiken Municipal Development Commission. Those amendments involved changing the governance of the AMDC from 9 appointed members to the 7 members of City Council themselves as allowed under the statute. That is an initial step towards transferring the properties currently held by the AMDC to the City of Aiken proper. And then a later determination will be made about the future of the AMDC and whether it continues as an organization or whether it is dissolved. Some of that has to do with the fact that the AMDC is named in the earlier referenced lawsuit. I am watching your meeting here remotely. So there's that bit of news. So now the directives and the work that the DRB has done regarding maintenance of the Hotel Aiken and those properties falls directly with the city and the city council currently as the AMDC. So in my capacity as Economic Development Director and Sabina as our Development Project Manager, we've been working with, Sabina has updated you previously on some of the work along as we've worked to secure the roof and limit the water intrusion. But over the last several weeks, we have been working with a group of architects and historic preservation experts and engineers, including Craig Bennett, who came highly recommended, and it was a pleasure to meet the gentleman. We did a top to bottom, stem to stern review of the hotel with him. Glenn Keys out of Charleston is a historic preservation consultant as well, and he's involved in the team. And I expect this week, actually they were putting the finishing touches on it today, a proposal from that architecture firm for the city and the city council to consider, so that we will have an architecture firm kind of establishing the short-term, near-term goals and objectives and the long-term needs of the hotel to preserve it. They're going to provide several options at our request. The first option would be purely to stabilize the building, work with some of the fenestration there on the exterior of the building, which could be encapsulation, could be removal, could be all the way up to repair. And then the roof is a high priority, and there's some other cosmetic issues along the exterior that they're looking at as well. So that would be the base level plan, and then they're offering some additional options whereby we'd like to work with the DRB to look at possibilities of doing additional work which might prepare the building and make it more attractive to people working with ideas of future adaptive reuse of that building, to include the improving the footings, which are insufficient structurally for the hotel, and the envelope, the masonry envelope of the building is not currently up to seismic code. It's not attached to the interior wood frame as code would require, so perhaps looking at what it would take to do some of that. But so there will be a number of options, and that will be available as we discussed at the work session. I expect to bring that back at the March 7th meeting, and I believe that if those proposals are reasonably within budget and attractive to the city, that those experts would be available for the next DRB meeting to make a presentation of their scope and plan of work for the building.
Thank you, Tim. And that would be March 7th. I believe the work session would be 5:30.
Correct.
If some of your consultants can be there, that would be great. So the current, we'll just put on hold this current plan, and they'll be using our plan as a starting point. Is that what I'm hearing? The maintenance plan that was already developed?
Yes, they had the notes from the DRB and the concerns, and then expanded on those, but those are incorporated into what they're working on for their scope of work.
Good. And I believe we also said in the work session that some items would be things that could be addressed immediately, and others would take several months. So that would be helpful if your consultants would break those down for discussion too.
Correct. And I hope to have, by that meeting of the 7th, pending the acceptance of these proposals and the engagement of these professionals, kind of a schedule moving forward that we can bring to the DRB and discuss the plan of attack for the building going forward.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Does anybody have other questions?
Tim, are there, as far as the money approvals, does that have to go through council, or who accepts the proposal and says, yeah, we're gonna spend this money? I guess it's trying to figure out a time frame on that.
These engagements would be by, well, actually, I can't say that definitively because, as I said, the AMDC is still the owners of the property, even though that body is now governed by City Council. It is a separate body that operates under separate rules, and we're in the process of the property being transferred from one to the other. But yes, essentially, because the City Council is now the governance of the AMDC, the answer is yes. Your Aiken City Council would have to approve any engagement or expenditures.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, Tim, didn't you say in the last meeting that we had that that process of transfer of title and to the city would take place mid to late March?
It could take place in mid to late March. Now, of course, I can't speak to what the actual action will be. The City Council could determine to move forward with the buildings remaining under AMDC ownership, but I anticipate, and everything that I've heard from council is that they do intend to transfer it to city proper. But as council, Jim Holly will tell you, it's not a good idea to predict the actions of a political body. We'll see what they do, and either way, we have the responsibility of maintaining the building.
Tim, this has been a lot. One question. In the work session, you mentioned something about the consultant made a comment about not being overly concerned about water infiltration at this point. Could you reiterate that for us?
Yes, Craig Bennett, who actually was recommended by the Do It Right Coalition to us, and is very knowledgeable. His only concern, he said, as we walked the building, he did point out that for a 120-year-old building, that the interior structure is very, very stable. It doesn't creak. The floors don't bounce. And he compared it to other local buildings where that's not the case. And he said that he has no concern that the timbers and the framing or the general structure of that building is at any risk. The only thing that suffers, in his opinion, would be flooring, none of which is original. So, you might not want to walk around on the plywood because there might be some soft spots, but all that's going to come out anyway. If there were to be a renovation or a historic adaptive reuse of the building. And then there is some plaster and wallboard that might be damaged, and similarly, that's all going to be removed anyway. But as far as the basic masonry structure and the huge timbers that are in there, he said there wasn't any concern. The timbers themselves are so full of creosote that they actually repel the water.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, I have one. Tim, as so far as the insurance on the building goes, who owns the policy? Is it who's the named insured on the policy?
All of those properties are insured by under the City of Aiken's South Carolina Municipal Insurance Reserve Fund policy.
Okay. Well, does the city own? The city doesn't own it now. It's owned by the AMDC, right?
The commission is a child of the city.
Okay.
Just like the DRB.
Fine. I just wanted that to be on the record.
If the DRB owned an asset, it would be insured by South Carolina, the SMRF, as they call it.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make that clear. Thanks.
Okay, if there are no other questions, we'll let Tim get back to his family, and we appreciate your being available on over the phone, Tim, and also
Sure
for being.
thing.
Thank you. Now, I think it sounds like that we're accepting this potential maintenance plan as information. And you all are, of course, welcome to comment on it
How
anytime
you gonna speak?
on this particular maintenance plan. But we will be getting an updated one that'll probably go much further and involve structural issues. Do y'all need to go through any of the items here? These were primarily addressing moisture infiltration, roofing problems.
I don't feel like we need to go through the list again. I don't think it's changed substantially since the last time we looked at it. I am frustrated by the fact that not much progress is being made on it. But in light of the fact that we're gonna get some real professional advice pretty quick, grand scheme of things, a few weeks is nothing compared to the amount of time we've been waiting already. Prudence would say that we probably need to wait and get the professional advice before we take any action, so
Right.
I just don't see any reason to go through them personally.
Yeah. So we have a starting point, now, I guess we would say that we've identified concerns, that really do need addressing, and I think Sabina probably agrees. All the items we've discussed, need addressing immediately if, in the next 30 days.
We're gonna have, he indicated that, we would have the engineers in person so that we could respond to questions, and we have public input as well.
It'll be probably a work session. Don't know that we'll have an opportunity to have public input. We'll have some right now probably, but I think we'll probably need to look at the time. We said 5:30. We're anticipating 5:30, 6:30. We may need to make it 4:30 to 6:30.
Yeah.
We'll talk and see what they have, what they're bringing. If it's a list of consultants, that's one thing. If they're gonna come and make a presentation and get into the details of the timing, which I think is our main concern, we may need more than one.
Right, well, since we brought this forward in the public meeting, in the regular session, would we not do the same thing with the reports?
Yeah. Yeah, but we won't, right now, we don't, I think we've got people here who, if they wanna comment on the maintenance plan we have in place. I don't know, we'll have to decide if this other one is a work session. We probably need a work session before we have a vote on that one, when we have a vote. But right now, I'd just soon go ahead, if y'all are in agreement. We might wanna allow people to comment, on this, and this is posted publicly, the maintenance plan.
That's correct. It's posted with the staff memo.
Let's just ask if anyone, would like to speak regarding the, what we're considering as far as the approach. And I'll let you come forward and give your name, and I know who you are, but for the record.
Hi, Linda Johnson, 515 Parkside Drive. First, I want to thank the city for finally being able to address the hotel, and Mr. O'Brien for bringing in the right experts to look at it. That's very exciting. He mentioned the idea of two categories of potential work. One's going to be basic work just needed to stabilize the building, and that will have to be done. But a second category where maybe there'll be some extra work to make the building more desirable to a developer who's interested in renovation. As you know, Historic Aiken Foundation strongly believes that preservation of the Hotel Aiken is the only real option, the only legitimate option. And so I'm very much hoping that we look at ways to make this property desirable to renovation people. So my question is, will there be an opportunity at some point here in this process for the public to comment on what steps the city takes towards that? I heard that the ideas would come to the DRB. You would be passing on ideas then to the city council. At what point would the public have the opportunity to talk to you about that and express their thoughts?
That was what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're just now getting new information. I think you probably heard it.
Yeah.
At the same time we did, about what their approach would be to bring consultants in. And my concern is that we probably don't have time to do that in a regular work session, so we may have to have a special work session. Very well could.
Okay,
We've had work sessions before
yeah,
where we had public comment. I'm not sure how
okay,
helpful that was, and we'll have to determine if we want to do that again.
okay,
We're glad to have people, I mean,
yeah,
I think you can see the council is trying to respond
I
to
agree.
concerns, and doing it right may take a little longer. That was my
Right.
concern, is bringing consultants in. I keep saying, but wait a minute, what about the roof and the shingles? You've seen the pictures,
Yeah,
and I don't think we want to wait 3 months to go begin making some
yeah,
repairs.
it'll be interesting to see what the
Personal.
report says with that. And yeah, I heard you talking about it, that there'd be a special work session, and that was my concern, is most work sessions, the public doesn't get to comment, we get to listen. And I do want to make sure that the public has some forum where they can give their input on this. So,
Yeah, now, this is one right now. If you've already prepared to address some issues that you felt like were top of the line items, concerns, feel free to chime in.
Well,
I'm really gonna be interested in the report and see what they say would be the important things, because I'm definitely not a developer. So,
Okay, and really, this meeting that'll be coming up, we'll be hearing what the composition of the design team might be. They will probably touch on issues that they feel are important and need to be addressed, but they won't have solutions yet. That might still be a time you all could comment
okay,
on if they've missed some items that are
All right.
critical.
okay,
But I think it'll have to be a kind of open work session,
okay.
obviously. But this first time, they're coming back so quickly. We want them to come back quickly, but it's really to identify who the team is
Okay,
and what their fees might be.
Right, I think that, I envision, maybe I'm wrong, but my vision, I don't know about the rest of the board, but I would prefer to have them do their presentation the first half so that everybody has an idea of what's going, and we'll have an interaction the first time, but then open it up to conversation.
okay,
I'd rather call it conversation.
that sounds great. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Aldini?
I'm Louis Valdini, 638 Magnolia Street. I'm a little bit afraid of sounding like a broken record on procedures. I've made some comments in writing to Jim Holly. I'm not aware of any vote from the Design Review Board to commence a process to review the Hotel Aiken, so I don't have a framework for understanding what you're doing right now. I believe you commented and started something about a maintenance plan in a work session, which is not an official act. Your only official acts occur in public hearings such as this one. You are also a quasi-judicial body, so you're required by law to establish a thorough and balanced record of what you did, because you're imposing your views on owners of property. So I would urge you, as far as I've read the statute many times, I don't see anything in the statute that refers to a maintenance plan. I don't think that's an official act that's attributable to the Design Review Board as part of the statute. I think you can place it under a review of demolition by neglect, because it was part of corrective actions that you would require of the owner. But as a result of that, and I commend it, I think everything that you're doing is great, so I'm not criticizing in any way, but anything that you do incorrectly is subject to challenge by others. So just as we have challenged it, we don't want somebody else to challenge what the city might be required as the owner to do to correct an instance of demolition by neglect or a number of instances of demolition by neglect. The owner has an obligation to maintain historic buildings, and it's clear the hotel has not been maintained. The city actually missed the opportunity to require the Shaws to bring the building up to snuff. So now that responsibility falls to the city, and we intend to enforce it. So we want this record to be complete, thorough, and balanced, so that the city has a chance to defend itself if it wants to, or express its opinions, and here it wants to. You need to create a forum for that. Think of a quasi-judicial body as acting like a court of law. And, you need to conduct yourself in a way that everything you say is on the record, so you need to think about putting all of these, and I think Jim is working on that already. Everything that we do in this regard should at least be referenced in the record, with maybe a reference to the work that went on in the work session. But I think the first thing you should do is open an investigation into demolition by neglect. This hotel has come up twice, came up in August of 2020. There was no decision. The Design Review Board has an affirmative obligation to make a determination whether demolition by neglect is occurring or has occurred. You failed to do that in August of 2020, maybe not the same people. You failed to do that in connection with your review in March of last year for the certificate of application demolition. You shouldn't fail to do it for the third time. There was a letter provided by Martin Buckley raising the issue of demolition by neglect. You need to take prompt action to respond to that. You are in charge of monitoring and enforcing demolition by neglect, and you've let it go for more than 6 months now. That's not a good record. You should get on it. You should start an investigation, follow a proper procedure, set a process forth, and close the investigation and make a determination.
And
Was
usually,
there demolition by
excuse me, Mr.
neglect?
Rinaldini,
Yes.
Usually that takes place, and we've had it in at least 3 instances, when the owner is not responsive to request by the city.
There's nothing in the statute about the owner being responsive. It says you have to make a determination.
Yeah, well,
You have to follow the law, Mr. Law. Your last name should give you a clue.
Yeah.
The law requires you to make a determination. Did the owner allow demolition by neglect?
when we declare that, it's because we're not getting any
No.
response.
You declare that because it's the law. That's when you declare that. Because if the owner defaults on his responsibilities, you have to enforce it. And we, the citizens, demand that you enforce it.
If he refuses to
The
respond.
law
and-
doesn't say anything about that. The law says you have a responsibility. There are 5 or 6 things, I think it's A through G. If you see those things, you have to make a determination. Was there demolition by neglect? Yes or no?
We
You
have
need to read the law.
invoked that before, in at least 3 cases. And usually it has to do.
Here's the situation. You're going to have a citizen standing here, and you're trying to enforce it against them, and they're going to tell you, you didn't enforce it against the city. You guys are clowns. I don't have to do what you tell me to do. You're not following the law yourself. Why should I have to follow the law if you're not following the law?
Well,
You
we're
need
over-
to follow the law.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the maintenance plan, which I understand is not necessarily for consideration, but it did envision and encourage the city to have recommendations or involvement by professionals in the preservation fee as part of the plan, and that might impact the schedules in segments of improvements. And so I just wanted to mention that is part of the components. And all I can assure you is that I will do my best to make sure, with my advice, that you have appropriate measures to enforce what you're trying to do. And to the best of my ability, and Mr. Rinaldini's email to me, it was forwarded to y'all. So you have copies of that.
So, for example, you haven't voted to start an investigation.
Mr. Rinaldini, your time's up.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
All I'm saying is everything you've done so far counts for nothing. It's not part of the record.
That's your opinion, and we will make sure there is an
We're
adequate.
pretty good in court. We'll make that opinion stick. So you need to figure out how to do things correctly and how to do things in a way that we can all have confidence in. It's been a long issue, and many of the issues are with this board. You should be doing your absolute best to do this. There's no reason you shouldn't. You guys are all committed to this. You put in tons of work. We're very grateful for that. But the statute is clear.
It is clear.
You need,
Following our appropriate procedures based
you
on-
haven't opened an investigation. I don't know what you're doing. You can't tell, can you tell me what you're doing with this maintenance plan?
Yeah, we,
Cite a section of the statute that you're following?
because your time's up, and I'm not gonna continue to talk when you won't obey the rules.
Would anyone else like to speak? Sure, if you come forward and give your name and address.
Good afternoon, Harrison Howell, 1033 Hain Avenue Southwest. Just a quick question about the maintenance plan. Part B lists some items that would be done in an undisclosed number of days. Is there any intention to fill that out anytime soon?
It sounds like we might be able to do it by March 7th.
Okay,
That's part of, as you see the first sentence, the assessment conducted by professionals in preservation will be considered by the owner, and so that's really the phase we're in now. And hopefully by March 7th, we'll get a better idea. Some of these, as I pointed out, are things that can be done in a matter of weeks.
right. And all this requires some funding to pass from city council?
I don't know how the funding, it would depend on really what we're talking about. I think windows are not a funding issue. Probably putting a new roof on it would be. And that's the kind of thing that would take more time.
Right.
But right now, yeah, I think the intention, that's why we left a blank in there. And, there's a good deal of thought put into what we identified as deficiencies in the structure that could lead to demolition by neglect.
Thank you. And then outside of the demolition by neglect, I think there was some conversation earlier about improving the visual appearance of the property itself. I just wanted to comment. I think that's a great idea. It would be really good to see, especially some of the old awnings are old and mildewed and in
Right.
need of
And
replacement.
weren't original, I don't think, including the
No,
wood,
I don't think they are.
including the wood canopy that is in, those are some things that are immediate, I think can have immediate attention.
Right, so there's a difference, I guess, like you're saying, between an immediate threat to the building, but also like, an immediate threat to the
Right, Mr. Chairman.
value of it.
Right, going forward, though, those items that we have listed in there are, we don't want to be limited to those. We're waiting on the report to come in from Mr. Bennett and others that gives us some insight as to order that they need to be taken in, and what needs to be done and to what extent. So that's going to be an important meeting, and I'm sure you'll be here for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's very prudent. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. I'm David Blake, Two Notch Road. I just wanted to say how pleased I am to hear that you have taken steps to hire a qualified person to assess the hotel in particular. But, all these things are positive, but I'm wondering, does anyone know in Exhibit B here, where there's been a Hotel Aiken analysis that's been made? There are still, I don't know who's doing it, but you're still continuing to assert, particular findings about the building before you've received the report that I'm excited to see. For example, in the first line here about the wood framing, the brick, and all of these things, but in particular, it asserts here that the building code requirements, it doesn't meet the current building code requirements when Craig Bennett has provided information about that not being the appropriate building code, or the applicable building code is rather the international existing building code that would be considered, not these other things. But, all through this, if you just read this, you'll see a number of things that are, I think it would be nice, or it would be better for you all to have Mr. Bennett's expert opinion on these issues, rather than continuing to assert the things that have been said before, based on the developer's report. But anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jude Orlando, 123 Jasper Street Southwest. My point of recognition is also Exhibit B. In particular, line items 1 and 2, where they attain to the window replacement of sash on Lawrence Street, as well as the replacement of rotted cornice. I know you guys are kind of speaking in terms of how those will be addressed in the future. Are you guys waiting for an initial analysis on the current state of those projects, or is there an opinion that those can be set aside and voted on currently? If so, when the cornice is replaced, will the cornice maintain its original dental feature? It does not list in Exhibit B that the cornice will be replaced to contend with the original feature of the dental molding that wraps around the entirety of the building. In addition, the window sash facing Lawrence, I'm struggling to remember which window sash is removed, if it's the one that was 100 Lawrence Street. It's a non-wooden glazed window. It's one piece of glass. Is that the sash in question that's going to be replaced? If so, that's not a sash. That's just a piece of glass. So potentially just clarification on those 2 points. One, what sash on Lawrence Street needs to be replaced? And if so, based on those replacements, what is the intended replacement of those sashes? And then 2, any repair work or replacement of the rotted cornice, will that cornice retain its original dental feature? It is not stated clearly enough in this pamphlet whether or not that replacement will maintain. As I'm sure you guys probably know, a lot of times developers use this as kind of a scapegoat to remove a good section of cornice or detailing work and say, well, 60% of it's gone. Let's just, put up a gutter, aluminum flashing, something along those lines, and then, what else can we remove?
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you guys can clarify those concerns.
Okay, we could do that. Now, the window, if Rebecca can show this on the screen up there, that's the window on Lawrence Street I believe we're talking about. It's a sash that blew out, I believe. You see the plywood?
Okay.
I believe that's the Lawrence Street.
Yeah, so that's going to be replaced with an additional 9/9 in that traditional, okay.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably inside the building right now, damaged. Mm-hmm. The cornice is something that is really a good thing to have experts look at.
Correct.
We none of us can really tell what the original design was supposed to include. It looks like it's a interior gutter that just allows water to run down the front of the building. I
Right.
can't believe that's what's supposed to happen, but
Right.
that's what's happening now. So we need to figure out how they want to. Do they want to reuse the interior gutter?
Right.
To me, it's would be preferable to at least temporarily close it over.
Right.
So then you're looking at the making sure, which we're not able to get. We really aren't qualified to climb up there and
Right.
test the sponginess of the wood and
Right.
how much of it needs to come off. Those are kind of things that this team should be able to do.
Right. Well, and I don't think the comment or the public objection would necessarily be to whether or not you guys are qualified to, determine whether the cornice is rotted or not. I think the point was mentioned in Linda Johnson's presentation of the history of downtown Aiken and the evolution of facades that are facilitated like Hotel Aiken. There was a first iteration that lasted 40 or 50 years, and then a remodel somewhere 20s, 30s, and very clearly that remodel included dental cornice work. So I think regardless of whatever findings there are, I think that dental cornice work is significant enough to be saved regardless. I don't think any sort of, retention, any sort of renovator or any sort of preservationist is going to go any further, removing stucco, going farther back to the original plan, even though the building doesn't look like the original, 1800s construction. So, I think that paramount helps shape the facade, especially on the Lawrence side, to maintain the dental cornice all the way around. So that would be my primary concern, only of this packet. So
Yeah, and really this is, as we mentioned earlier, it's kind of a starting point. Before we had any consultants, we said, hey, guys, and you all help. We've got some issues here that need addressing.
right,
And one or two people have tried to do that over the last few months, but I think now they're going to bring in other folks to really describe how we want to repair, how they want to repair that cornice, and roof and so on and so forth.
yeah,
So it's not something we really can answer without now having the consultants on board, which isn't that long.
right. Well, I mean, so I guess the volley then would be, if we can see physical evidence of that cornice existing for 100 years, what is the consultant going to lend you any sort of credence to replacing that, we can't physically take from our own eye, a visual appeal? It obviously needs to be saved and replicated as closely as possible to what's there, right? So that's the main concern. That's the intention of the board, is to retain how it is currently. Okay, that's what I wanted to get.
Anything can be replicated.
Right. Well, exactly. So,
But there are issues right now that are even more critical than just duplicating trim, and that's
right.
Moisture getting into the front of the building and
Right.
the roof.
Right.
What I'm interested to hear from the experts is what kind of material that we should use to keep it like it should be for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Right.
There are different types of wood that you use on the exterior.
Yeah.
I know on my house, when I had to redo it and get approval from the DRB, when we first moved back, we had to replicate, and we used certain types of wood, cypress and
Right.
others.
John, to be fair, your time is up.
Thank you.
And yours too.
Thank you.
We're trying to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Time,
Yeah.
but thank you for the
Of course.
comments.
Of course.
They're
Thank you.
pertinent. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I don't know that we necessarily need to vote, Jim. This is on our agenda, but it's possible action on the maintenance plan. We've discussed it, got some public input.
Yeah,
You
if I
wanna-
may,
you wanna-
if I may,
Yeah.
going back to Mr. Lott's question, the executive session is listed as item, but if there's no motion to go into executive session, it doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
I would just suggest, if the board wants to consider it, to continue the item E, discussion possible
Right.
action on maintenance plan for Hotel Aiken until the March 7th meeting. And then at that meeting, you can take whatever action you want to.
Well, and would even go a little further than that. I think we're gonna get an update on March 7th, but I'm not sure we're gonna have an action plan, so I would probably recommend that we continue it until an appropriate time. And I just don't know if that's March 7th or not. It might be a month after that. But I am frustrated by the lack of progress. I think we hear that from our concerned citizens out there. And I came here tonight ready to make a vote on something. But in the presence of some experts' opinion, which should just be a few more weeks out, I feel like it wouldn't be prudent to take an action if we're right on the cusp of really having some better information. And I agree with McDonald. I have been on this board when we have voted demolition by neglect before. And what we have always looked for is to try to be a kinder, more generous design review board. If you're working with us, we'll work with you kind of situation. And I think that's the right way to be, is to look for people who are trying to do the right thing and to work with them. We would be a little more firm on the city than we would a concerned citizen, but I am hearing the city's concern to try to move things in the right direction. I think we're on the cusp of getting some better information, some better advice on how to proceed forward, and I just think it's the right thing to do to continue this just a few more weeks until we can get better information in our possession.
if I may, if you continue it to March 7th, you can always make another motion. Then
We could.
And with a specific deadline or some other mechanism for triggering it coming back. And it doesn't have to be at a regularly scheduled meeting.
Right.
So would y'all like to make make a motion then?
Certainly. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we take item E, the maintenance plan for the Hotel Aiken, and continue that to the March 7th meeting, and then we can decide how to proceed from there.
And we may adjust the time.
We may adjust it.
Depending on the
Right. It sounds like we're not going to know
content.
the funding part. We might know a plan, but we don't know a funding part, and we probably won't even know a schedule until we know the funding part. So I suspect we won't have a final answer at the March 7th meeting, but we can certainly continue it that far.
Yeah.
But I would, I've sat on this board for years, and I was here in 19 when the Shaws came through, and, and I'm way overdue for some improvements. And so I feel good that we're about to have something, so.
Okay, and I appreciate Sabina's, now Sabina has been working almost daily on that, but it's literally bigger than one person can handle, and so now we'll have some other experts.
Yeah, I got a question for Sabrina. Do you have your own hard hat to wear in a?
And raincoat.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I'm just about, should, to make it a matter of public record, do we need to readdress what we talked about in our meeting, in our work session about holding additional meetings to ferret out and look through our processes and procedures to, over the next months?
I think we should talk about our procedures, and I'm in favor of that, and I'm willing to participate in those meetings too. And I also feel like, since we're throwing ideas to the chairman, who I put a lot of faith in, I appreciate your leadership over the many years I've sat on this board. I think that it's fair for the public to have some comment period. Maybe the first part of our next session, our work session, should be for us to hear the proposal and to ask our questions, and maybe 15 or 20 minutes for some public questions is probably fair. With of course whatever your leadership, but I think that it's a fair thing for public.
But
staff.
we'll let staff finalize dates for these special meetings, I think.
So our charge to Rebecca is to help us set up some meetings.
That's true.
Yeah, all right. Well, I make a motion that we hold some, over the
I think
next.
she's referring to
My motion.
Yeah,
Mr. Locke.
Go ahead.
I'll second.
Okay, you
I
got
made
it.
the motion.
You made the motion. and
I
you-
seconded it. Yeah.
Okay.
Second?
No? Yes.
What is it?
I would like to take Mr. Lott's motion as it stands and also add, could we please send a letter to the city manager to say that if there's any of these items that can be taken care of and easily, to don't stop work now, just tackle some of them.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that amendment.
Yeah, that was the purpose of this, was to identify some things that are low-hanging fruit. And,
And also the appearance of, the public wants the appearance to be improved.
so now,
If I always like to say if I may, but if that was a motion to amend the pending motion, and we need a second on that,
I second.
and then, if I may, a vote on the amendment.
okay. All in favor of the amendment, raise your right hand. And that's to add last sentence, okay? Now, that passed. So now the amended motion, we'll vote on it.
Okay.
All in favor of your amended motion, raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Yes.
Second?
What's the date of our procedures session?